and welcome back to the Ghoul Guide Association, the show where we talk about all things Gothic and pop culture. We are, as ever, your Ghoul Guides. My name is Lauren.
And I'm Mary.
And we're back with another book review. And hopefully Mary is going to recommend me something I've not read yet, because I don't know what this review is about.
Yeah. So we have reviewed lots of different things so far. TV shows, films, plays, books,
Live shows.
lots of live shows, lots of books. So do stay tuned for more different kinds of reviews coming up. I think we both have some really interesting ones potentially in the pipeline. But today is another book review. I've been doing a lot of traveling for work, which means that I have a lot of time to be reading on trains. So I am getting through quite a lot more books than even I used to. And I've been so excited to share this one with you, Lauren. And I really
Okay, I'm
hope that
excited.
I don't know if you'll know, you might have heard of it, but I'm really hoping that you
Okay.
haven't read it or got it. But
Okay.
essentially, just to set this up even more and keep you in suspense, I went into Waterstones a few weeks ago wanting to buy a book, and the book that I wanted to buy wasn't there. It wasn't on the shelf. But I was like, but I wanted a new book just because apparently I don't have enough. And I saw this, and I had read it, like I had read like about it before, and then
Okay.
it called to me. And I'm glad
It
that I
spoke your
did
name.
because I think it's a perfect Lauren book. But so to keep you to stop all the suspense, this is the book that I have read. It is Holy Boy.
Oh, so the only reason I have not picked it up is
Yeah.
because I have been on a bit of like a hardback sort of ban.
Yes.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
so
Okay.
excited.
So for those of you who are listening, not watching, I'm holding up a new copy of Holy Boy by Lee Heejoo, which you might have to help me with pronunciations in this episode, Lauren.
Okay, you might have to tell me how things are spelled.
Yes. Here we go. Lee Heejoo.
Oh, it's he double E. Yeah, so Heejoo.
Heejoo. Translated. I'll just hold this up. Translated by. Oh, that is not.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Yeah, no. Translated by Johan Lee or Joe.
Mhm.
And this came out in the UK last month. So it came out in
Yes,
March
it's very new.
2026. It's very, very new. And it is the first novel of Lee Heejoo's that has been translated
Mhm.
into English. So she was born in Seoul in 1992. She graduated from Korean Literature Department at Chung-Ang University. So she is a little bit younger than me, which is always a little bit depressing when you're like, oh, I haven't. What if
See, I
I?
was just going to be like, oh, she's also a millennial.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a nice way to look at it. Okay. Yeah. There we go. She's also a
Hey, if she's
millennial.
if she's a little bit younger than me, then she's even more younger than me. So at least you have that to rely on.
Her debut novel is called Phantom Limb Pain, and it was published in Korea in 2016, and it
Mhm.
won an award. I'm not gonna try and pronounce that, but it was
Award
award
winning.
winning, and she's also published lots of other uh, short fiction and other books as well. Her debut novel and Holy Boy, the book that I'll be talking about today, both explore K-pop fan culture.
Mhm.
Um, and also I just always like when I read translated fiction, I like to mention the translator because I think
Yes.
it is so important when you're reading a translated
I
work as to how
yeah.
it translates. And reading
Yes.
about the translation, I think people have said
Mhm.
that Johan Lee does a really great job in some instances of retaining kind of cultural
Yes.
specific Korean words,
That's
but then
really good to
also
hear.
but then sometimes with like specific phrases translating
Yeah.
it into something that is more
I
understandable for an English
actually
audience.
Yeah, I actually just so I went into Waterstones recently to buy a book, and I ended up ordering it online because they didn't had gone to buy Asaka Yuzuki's new novel, Hooked, and they didn't have the
Yeah.
Waterstones special edition, and the
Yes.
Waterstones special edition had an essay in the back by Polly Barton, who translated Hooked and translated Butter. And
Uh,
I was like,
yeah.
I want to read this essay. I want to read about Barton's translation because when you're reading, you can kind of tell those moments that will have been a like really interesting translation decision. And I genuinely was like, well, I'm not buying that one. And I went home and I ordered it online
Yeah.
instead so I could get, and oh no, I had to buy more books to meet the minimum shipping.
Yeah.
But I literally went
Yeah.
home and ordered it because I was like, I want that damn essay. I want to read that essay. And I did read the essay and it was really good.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. And
I'm
obviously,
so excited that you picked this up because
yeah, yeah.
this
Well,
is such an overlap of our interests.
yeah. So I will say, I enjoyed it. It was slightly, well, it was kind of what I was expecting, but also I
Mhm.
think the reasons why I picked it up, some of those reasons weren't as much there as I personally would
Yeah.
have liked. But when I was reading it, I was like, this is really good for so many of our overlapping interests, and also like, oh, this is just a perfect Lauren book. Um so the book itself, so a review in the Times described it as a K-pop version of Stephen King, um, which I just
That's how
thought,
I've heard it described, like
yeah,
K-pop misery.
yeah, and I think I I've read quite a lot of King, and
Mhm.
I there's always something about King that I enjoy up to a point, and I think it's
Yes.
because for me personally, I don't think Stephen King can write women, and
I
I
would
just
not disagree.
no, and I can't. I always find it really difficult when I'm reading a book, and it is not necessarily. I've read lots of books by men that are really good at
Sorry, I
writing
thought
women.
you were just gonna say, "I've read lots of books." I was gonna be like, "Yeah, you have. You've read
um,
lots of books."
this didn't this didn't have that, and I think what it does have
Mhm.
is bucket loads of kind of suspense and creepiness, and also a lot of
Yeah.
cringe moments, which is exactly what you'd be expecting. Um,
Yeah.
the tagline, which I think really sums up the plot, is one idol, four fans, worship's never been bloodier. So I think you kind of get a sense of what is happening.
Yeah.
Um, Lauren, do you want to give a TLDR of what an idol is? Because I think for someone, for me, I'm not into pop culture.
Mhm.
I'm not into pop music, which isn't to say that I don't think that I'm not saying that it's bad. It's just it's not for me. So whether it's K-pop or J-pop or American pop or Britpop, I'm just not that interested.
Mhm.
So in terms of the actual like culture, I
Okay.
am coming from it from afar. So, but for
Yeah.
someone like you who is a fan, what is an idol?
Yeah. Okay, so a K-pop idol specifically, so the Korean music system essentially, and I'm talking about pop music. There is Korean independent artists, and there is some great Korean indie and all sorts of stuff. But K-pop essentially was inspired by the American version. Japan also did this too with groups like AKB48, did it very successfully, in some ways more successfully originally than Korea. Um, but they do a sort of production system. So when you are about, a classic story would be you're about 12 or 13, you are eating street food on the side of the road, and a woman comes up to you with a business card and says, "You've got really great visuals. Have you ever thought about being an idol?" And you go home and you say to your mum, "Hey, this lady said that I could be an idol." You go and audition for this company, and the company says, "We're going to train you to be an idol." You either move into the dorms or you carry on living at home, and every day after school, you train for like 6 hours. You go to summer camp, You learn how to sing, you learn how to dance, you learn how to rap, your image is curated. And when you are ready to debut, usually teenage, late teens, you are formed into a group and then you debut as a group. Most of these groups will have concepts, and within those concepts, traditionally, you would have like a position. So you would be the visual member or the main dancer, or you would be the rapper or the singer. And in what's known as third generation K-pop, which is really the peak of what's known as the Hallyu wave, which is where Korean pop culture became a sort of international commodity and really reinvigorated like the Korean economy. There's a singer called Boa who was a K-pop idol who was literally credited with saving Korea after the 1999 economic crash. But essentially, you would all have like an identity. So you'd have like the young, cute, younger brother one, and then you'd have the dark, mysterious one. If you've seen K pop Demon Hunters, the boy band, the Saja Boys, there's Baby, Mystery, Abs, like they are based on real K pop idols in some way, shape, or form. And the idea of the idol is to build a parasocial relationship with them. So not only do they sing and dance, they have some kind of story. My favorite group, EXO, they're aliens from outer space and they're fighting against the evil Red Force and they all have powers. It's very cringy, it's very 2000s. But the idea is like, as with traditional Western boy bands, there's something for everybody. But in the Korean system and in the Japanese system, the idea is that the idol is just that. They are an idol. They don't date, they don't smoke, they don't curse, they donate to charity, they work hard, and their most important thing is the fans. And again, K-pop Demon Hunters makes that joke where Junior says, the fans. Ah. The whole idea is that the idol is somebody who is there for you, who, when you're having a hard time, you can listen to the idol and you can watch the idol, and the idol will reinvigorate you. And then you buy the merch and you go to the concert, and the idol is like, you're what gets me through this, you're the most important thing. That parasociality is encouraged by the companies and it is manufactured that way. They, particularly with the boy groups, create them in such a way that it encourages that idea. There are literally videos where like, it's filmed from your perspective and you're like reaching out to hold their hand or something. And they'll ask questions like, what kind of girl do you like? And they are very much produced and manufactured. And it's now into kind of like its fourth or fifth generation. It's starting to kind of change, but the height of K-pop and the kind of the core idea of an idol is somebody who is genuine and earnest, but is also perfect. And that perfection is for you, and that your relationship to them is as important as their relationship to you, essentially.
Well, thank you very much for that very detailed.
See, I
Yeah.
can be objective about things that I love. I can criticize the things I like.
I so I think whether whether like Lauren, you're really into the music and the fan culture of K-pop right now, or if like me, you're kind of coming at it from a bit of a distance. I think
Mhm.
that is a really helpful summation of what kinds of things you can expect from this book. And it's essentially looking at fandom culture through the horrific potentials of that
Mhm.
parasociality. So
Mhm.
the book itself is set in the 1990s, so it's quite early. What we're
So
talking
it's kind
about,
of
and
first, second generation of
yeah,
K-pop.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's looking forward to
KJT.
and imagining the potentialities of our especially digital internet era.
Well,
But even in the 90s, I think what you
yeah.
see is there are still all of these aspects
Mhm.
for as the plot goes on. There's one idol and there's
That
four
makes
fans.
sense. For
So
fans.
this becomes it's it's a book about cults. This is a cult
Yes.
of fandom where these four
Mhm.
women get together and then worship this idol in an incredibly
Well,
unhinged and
yeah.
violent way.
Important context potentially is that there's something called a sisang or a sesang, and a sesang is like an obsessed stalker fan,
Yeah.
and they like they get idols' phone numbers, they harass them, they break into their houses. There was an incident where members of kind of like the first big K-pop girl group, Girls' Generation, um, were kidnapped. Somebody
Mm.
like
Yeah.
hired a van that looked just like their van. There's been instances of people breaking into tour buses, breaking into hotel rooms, hiding out in the men's bathrooms. So there is like there's an idol who was in one of the second generation groups who can't dance anymore because he was in a car crash. And the car crash was because people were like hounding the
Yeah.
house. So there has been, I mean, my favorite group, one of them got married, and people literally like they gathered outside the company
So this
with all
yeah,
of their merchandise and burned it. Like people go
I
to another level.
I think at times and so Lee Heejoo is very open about the fact that she is a K-pop fan herself. And I think it's very much looking at with an awareness, you know, the fan
Mhm.
culture and holding up a mirror to some of the horrors that, as you say, have been
Yeah.
literally perpetuated. Um,
Literally.
so the K-pop idol in this book is a 21-year-old young man called Yosep or Yohep. Um, and we learn that he had actually been sent death threats to, so there is a bit where he's at his kind of his house where his manager and his security, all that kind of stuff, he's been sent like all of this stuff, death threats, even I think blood, like potentially menstrual blood,
Mhm.
dead animals. And I think one of the scary parts about this bit is that the security are like, we've not seen this person on camera, so it's someone who knows the layout of
Mhm.
his house. And so
Mhm.
part of why he's being sent death threats is because he's had a relationship with another female idol and
Mhm.
he's being, yeah, stalked by obsessed fans.
Mhm.
What happens? So we find this out in the middle of the book, but when we start the book, we learn that he has been kidnapped by four women who are taking it in turns to kind of look after him. They've told him he was in a car accident, his legs don't work.
Oh my
So,
god, so it is misery.
yeah, his legs don't work. So he's essentially bedbound and
Yeah.
they have to look after him. And also it's it's raining really heavily. No one can get in or out of the place that they're being kept. But don't worry, we'll look after you, all of that kind of stuff. So at the beginning, you can see he doesn't quite remember who he is or what happened. So we know that
Mhm.
something happened to him. And then it slowly becomes clear to him and to the reader. Like, for example, at one point, he gets out of bed and he's like, oh, my legs do work. And we
Mhm.
also know that they're giving him medication. You know, this is for the pain. And there's one night where he just forgets to take it or someone forgets to give it to him. And then he's like, I don't feel like I'm in any pain. And also, my legs seem fine.
Mhm.
So we're like, okay, what is going on? And so as the novel kind of goes on, you learn more about these four women. And I'm not going to say too much about them, but they are, so we have Anna, who is a middle-aged woman. She is the money and the brains behind the kidnapping. And her as you learn more about her, it is quite, I think, creepy. She is quite
Mhm.
creepy and predatory.
Mhm.
She's an older woman, and we learn that she has engaged with male sex workers before, always younger than
Mhm.
herself, and there is an element of grooming involved in her
Yeah.
relationship. And I think that, again, as the novel goes on, and I don't think the novel does a very good job of signposting this, but this is a novel that deals with the dark side of fan culture. And I'm not going to spoil too much, but there are suggestions and like, not vivid or
Mhm.
graphic, but there are descriptions of like sexual assault and that kind of thing, um,
Mhm.
perpetrated by
Well,
women.
there was a whole I don't know, and again, I don't know how much of this like is is legit or not because I don't speak Korean. I'm not in Korea. I'm not Korean, so I'm getting my news and my information through a bunch of different. If you think about how many steps removed I am. But a few years ago, there was a big scandal around the idea of sponsors,
Mm.
and it sort of came out that a lot of older women, rich older women, were sponsoring young male wannabe idols and basically
Yeah,
investing in the company. And the way that and female idols had this happen to them too, but I think obviously because it was there's always something about it when it's women, but there was this kind of scandal around these 18, 19, 20-year-old young men being sent to private rooms in clubs to entertain these powerful, rich, older women who were then essentially grooming them and in exchange for the promise of making them famous. So that I'm not surprised that that's an aspect of it because there
yeah.
is this real ickiness that
I
is
think
100% present.
and I think it needs to be there, and I think we see this in all aspects of pop culture, because so much of it is a kind of glorification of youth. And I mean, thinking back to, for example, someone like Emma Watson, there was literally a
Oh my
whole
god,
thing
yeah.
in one of the British
Countdown.
newspapers counting down
Mhm.
to her 16th birthday, because then she would be legal. And then you have all of these
Yeah.
horrible, lecherous old men kind of,
Yeah.
saying these
Mary-Kate and
really
Ashley.
creepy, yeah, people are
Mhm.
of all genders
Yeah.
can be
Well,
weird and creepy.
there's been a whole thing at the moment around a female producer who the girls in her group are incredibly young, and the way she styles them and produces
Yeah.
them is very, very problematic and very uncomfortable. And you've got idols debuting at like 16, 17 years old, like young girls.
Yeah.
um yeah.
So this is, I think, I found it really interesting and fascinating.
Hmm.
I think if you are someone who is a K-pop fan and wants a
There's even more
nice,
there.
happy book, this is definitely holding up a mirror to fan culture. And I think that this
Hmm.
is specific in
Of
some
course
ways to
it.
K-pop fan culture, but it's also just, you find this in any fan culture, which is
Hmm.
why I think I did enjoy it as a horror thriller.
Yeah.
The other women, you have Hei, who is another middle-aged woman, and I'm not going to say anything about her, but just that she is kind of on the periphery, but then also quite important
Okay.
um, to Yosep. Then there are two younger women, one called Mihi, who is a kind of young, pretty fan, but who kind of is a bit of a couch surfer. She doesn't have a lot going for her, but she does go to a lot of
Hmm.
Yosep's events. And then
Hmm.
there's Nami, who is also young, and she's a trainee shaman, and she sees him on TV once and then immediately falls in
Hmm.
love. So you have like these very different, distinct fans,
Yeah.
and again, we learn, you're kind of thrown into the scenario at the beginning, and then you learn, okay, something is creepy here, and then that's when you learn,
Yeah.
okay, these four
Hmm.
women have kidnapped this man, and this is quite
Hmm.
creepy. um they are holding him, and this is where it gets really gothic. They're holding him in a secluded mansion filled with taxidermy. So it's
Okay.
very atmospheric, and there are
Hmm.
some bits of the narrative where Yosef is kind of talking about all these animals that, so the house that it belongs to, the one of the owners, went out and hunted. And then
Mhm.
you have all this taxidermy on the wall, but it is creepy, and it's meant to be
Mhm.
creepy. They're in a fictional town called Yong Ong Yongrang, which I have probably
Mhm.
pronounced wrong, but also it's fictional, so you know.
Mhm.
But in the real location of Gangwon-do, which
Oh
is
yeah.
on the peninsula, so it's on the border
Yeah.
of South Korea and North Korea, and that's
Mhm.
very, very intentional. And this town is also quite bizarre and creepy. And I still have so many questions about this town. So there are, as the narrative goes through, there's lots of kind of unexplained corpses that just seem to wash up on shore, and they're never
Well,
really
in
addressed.
the I wonder if it's something. Obviously, I'll maybe comment when I kind of read it, but obviously in like the 70s and 80s, you had like the military coups. A
Oh,
lot of
no,
people were
yeah,
murdered by the government, but then so did you say it's set in
it's the 90s.
1999?
I don't, it's
So
unspecified, I think.
the Asian economic crash
Mm,
happened in 1998, 1999. Um, what's it called? What was that film? That No Other Choice.
mm,
So
yeah.
like that to me sounds like also a very specific intentional dating, because that was such a period of like economic high and then massive economic low, and
I think,
there was a lot
yeah,
of
there's lots
death.
of things that are hinted at that you can look into, or just have like kind of
Hmm.
it's not, and I think that is it's really important that it's not just that these four women are a bit taking things too far, and
The times are bad.
this is quite, yeah, and there's
Hmm.
lots of different things going on. There's also in this town like a strange woman who's wandering around in like a white wedding dress, and she appears
Ooh.
at several times, and again it's never really explained who she is, or where she's come from. She doesn't seem very well, but she just wanders in and out, and it just, I think, adds to the overall unsettleness. That's not a word.
Hmm.
Unsettling, no.
The
Nature, yes.
uncanniness.
The uncanniness, these are words. I don't have a PhD in
Unheimlich.
English. Yeah. um, and I think that it just makes, when you realize what's happening in this mansion, and then you do see how secluded it is, and then you see what they're doing, I think it is very, very interesting. So if you're looking for a kind of very slow build Gothic thriller, then you will find this interesting, even if you're not into K-pop.
Hmm.
And I think just kind of focusing on the idol himself, I think he's very
Hmm.
much intended to be a cipher. You do get little
Yeah.
snippets of him, but he is very
Yeah.
much in the book. He's not specified in any way, and there is just one. I don't think he's part of a
Hmm.
group, and I think it is partly because he's meant to be uh this
So
cipher that
you
these
think
women
of
are. Yeah, so you, as the reader, if you are into that, you can then
so I'm
project
gonna
your
picture
own.
my K-pop idols and
Yeah,
feel all sorts of ways.
some
That's
of
really
the
clever.
and some of the things are quite horrific in this. So the women are kind of discussing having to clean him. So not all of the women
Yeah.
enjoy the fact that they have to, in order to keep up the ruse that his legs don't work, they have to obviously wipe
Mhm.
his backside. And one of the women says, "Don't you think even Yosep's excretions make him beautiful?" And there is just this idea that when you become so obsessed,
Mhm.
so caught on something, that you just distort everything so much. Everything
Mhm.
is so distorted that
Mhm.
literal shit appears beautiful. And then you can kind of see that in that distorted reality, you're not thinking logically. So of course it makes
Mhm.
sense to you that you would kidnap this
Yeah.
boy who obviously is in love
Yeah.
with you and obviously
Yeah.
reciprocates your desires because you're not in a world that makes sense. And I think that
Yeah.
that is I found that quite interesting in that way.
Mhm.
And also something the name is really interesting as well because it's a transliteration of Joseph, which is,
Yeah.
you know, if we're thinking biblically, and we know
Mhm.
that Korea, South Korea especially, did have a lot of Christian religious colonization. I think
Well, it also
Joseph,
has a lot of Christian cults.
yes, but Joseph is the husband of the Virgin Mary,
Mhm.
and so I think it's a very deliberate name choice in that you have Joseph, this amazing idol,
Mhm.
and then you, the virgin
Yeah,
fan
because 'cause you're
who
devoted. Yeah.
you're yeah, so I think that that is fascinating. I wrote down
Yeah.
some quotes. I wrote down some quotes from the author, just because I found them fascinating. So this was in an interview that she did with the translator. So which was
Oh,
just really
cool.
fun. It was really fun to read, and I'll,
Yeah.
I'll maybe include a link to it because if you,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that it's a really I'd read the whole interview, but um, responding to the question, what inspired you to write the novel? She says, I wanted to write something fun to read in the pace and structure of a thriller. I've been a K pop fan for a long time, with intermittent stretches of not stanning. And at the time, I was keeping some distance from the fandom culture. It's sometimes hard to write when I'm too much in love, so being in that phase of my passion cooling a little made me feel that I could depict K pop and desire from a much sharper perspective. I was also deeply into genre fiction at the time, so I wanted to combine the two. And I think I know you have spoken a lot about female desire as well. So I think
Yeah.
it is just, I think all of that, it is very much a thriller. And
Yeah.
contact warning for people that don't like violence. This does get very violent towards the end. I'm not going to say what happens, but it is very much a thriller
I
with,
mean,
yeah.
they've kidnapped a guy.
Um, and also just to speak about the place as well because I think the place is really important. um so responding, why did you create a fictional location rather than using real place, and why Gangwon-do? And when I read this answer you'll see why I also was like, this is such a Lauren book. So she responds, geographically, South Korea isn't a big country. It's even smaller after the peninsula was split in half following the Korean War in 1950. It's only a 6-hour drive from the southernmost tip to the northernmost edge. But as a writer, I always picture a wider space, one that leaves more room for wilder imaginations. So I ended up creating a fictional town. Although Ongrang isn't real, Gangwon-do is. It's one of the northmost regions in South Korea. Many parts of it remain undeveloped, and much of the land
Mhm.
is mountainous. Because it's colder than the rest of the country, it's full of vacation homes and ski resorts for winter, and the ocean makes it a popular summer destination too. At the same time, it borders North Korea and has the most military bases. It's not unusual to run into a no civilians permitted sign out on a walk near a hotel. The coexistence of entertainment and fear, that also applies to
Mhm.
contemporary Korea. So Gangwon-do felt like the right place to reveal South Korea's duality, the birthplace of K-pop, yet a nation still living under a ceasefire. And there is a
Yeah.
basement in this mansion, and in the interview she explains, why that's important in this kind of geographical region,
Yeah.
because you would need it as a
It's
as
so
a
close.
as a
Yeah. Well,
shelter, yeah.
people
um
I think people often are confused as to, like, why is Seoul so close to Pyongyang?
yeah,
And it's because the country was cut in half, like, there
yeah,
was no real sense made to the split, and what's happened is now this huge thriving capital city, which is now the hub of this massive global entertainment, is mere hours drive from a war zone. And it is, I think, it's been really fascinating as a fan watching Western fans respond to their idols having to do their military service.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, the one thing that I was worried about with this book, because I didn't know much about the author, was I'm always a little bit apprehensive of things that hold a mirror up to a certain culture, because sometimes they can just be like dismissive and aggressive. You know, we see this a lot in the Gothic, where a critique of something that is usually popular with women can be, you know, quite vapid and dismissive. But knowing that that it's almost a self critique, I always find a lot more value in someone
Yeah.
like my favorite Austen satires are the people that like Austen and things like that. So that makes me want to read it even more. But yeah, I have hovered over
Yeah.
this book multiple times in the last few weeks and then forced myself to walk away
Well,
because
don't
I'm on a
worry.
no hardback.
You don't need to buy it. You can borrow my copy. And I'll just
Yay.
finish on this because obviously a lot of the book is about female desire, but there is also a little bit of an exploration, and it is just a little snippet, but like
Mhm.
kind of exploration and examination of queer desire too. So
Cool.
there is another one of Josep's managers, who is also a man. We get a little snapshot into him and his life,
Mhm.
and in this section he does go we also get like Vietnamese sex workers as well, women.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is that even in this little bit that we get, it does show how pop culture and this kind of specific kind of fandom can really again, it's about distortion. It can
Mhm.
distort and twist that kind of queer desire
Yeah.
that maybe
Well,
isn't as accepted,
one
or
of the yeah,
even
one
by
of
the
the
self into
really
something horrifying.
yeah, one of the really kind of paradoxical things about K-pop is there are no mainstream out queer idols. There are idols who have kind of said things, but huge parts of the fandom is shipping the idols together. So there is
Yeah.
this huge culture around, and the way they shoot them, they always pair them up. So it'll always be like, right, you're going with it, and they know who is popular together. But the to even suggest publicly that someone might not be straight is like, you know, oh my god, no, 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 no.
And
So that is also really
there's no
interesting.
suggestion of Yosep, because we don't get that much of Yosep's
Of
inner
him. Mhm.
of him. He is very much almost as much of a cipher as you can make someone. But what you do
Yeah.
get is his manager Park, and I'll just read what Lee Heejoo writes about that. So she says, he's jealous of Josep and loves him in a different, twisted way than the women do, yet he's unable to call what he feels love. He loathes himself for being drawn to a man, so he seals off his feelings, locks them away. The 1990s, when Holy Boy takes place, was when Korea's first queer magazine was published and queer communities became more visible to the public. At the same time, most people thought of queers as nothing more than strange youngsters. I often had to think about the sorrow of those who couldn't even define themselves and had to hide their true selves in that era. So, this isn't, you get this quite a lot in the book. There's lots of
Mhm.
little kind of snapshots that aren't fully explored, which in some ways that's a
Yeah.
shame, but in other ways I think it adds to the uncanniness of the
It's
book.
it's reminding me a lot, the way you're describing it, of something like Asako Yuzuki's Butter, where
Mm,
you get these hints of things and it's like there for a reason, but it's not gonna go down that path. And there's something about that that I actually quite enjoy usually, and
mm,
not always. Like when it's well done though, I quite like that, where it's like you don't have to go into every issue, but it's that acknowledgement that everything exists at the same time
yeah,
and
yeah,
everything is like a culmination in that
yeah.
way. Okay, well, I will be having this off for you next time I see you.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason that I didn't give it to you the last time that I saw you was just because I wanted to save your surprise reaction for this
I
podcast. So
did
we
not
could
think that's what you
so
were
that
gonna
we
when
could
you pulled it up, I was
we
like,
could share it together.
"Ooh!"
I want yeah, so dear listeners, you have been able to share in this moment and I hope you
Mhm.
appreciate that. What I will say is that the chapters in this book are very, very long. And I wish that
That's
they
not your
had maybe
favorite.
no, it's not my favorite. But that is just as a kind of structural observation.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
She likes a
I
short
think
chapter. And that's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
Well, that was a great review. Thank you. I am very excited to read that. If any of you have read that, let us know. If you want any other Korean fiction recommendations or you have some for us, let us know. It's a really
And also
exciting time in translated literature at the moment.
not just Korean. You know, we read a lot of things. If you have
Mhm.
any books translated or not translated, then
Yes.
always love getting reading
Yes,
recommendations.
please. Yes, please. But in the meantime, until our next review, stay safe and stay spooky.
Stay safe and stay spooky.